Welcome to the Vintage Ballers Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Coreno. And on today's episode, we have Rob O'Reilly joining the show. Rob is a comedian, writer, and producer who has done almost 20 years of stand-up comedy. So without further ado, please welcome Rob O'Reilly. When did you really first fall in love with stand-up comedy?
So I used to watch a lot of Comedy Central as a kid. And I would watch like Comedy Central Presents, and it would be like Jim Gaffigan and Mitch Hedberg and Dane Cook and Brian Regan. And I just kind of got obsessed with comedy, during my kind of becoming a teenager type years. And at some point, a talent show. So in my sophomore year of high school, there was a talent show at Bay High, and I tried to I had a Spanish teacher who told me I should do something for it. So I was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So I tried to put together an act at that point. And I only had basically one bit, if you can even call it that, which was I would do the only thing I could think of is I used to make my friends laugh by doing an impression of the Jerry Springer Show, where I would kind of act out all the parts. It was big at the time. and I would usually do some sort of a mythological guest, Rumpelstiltskin or something.
And who would he be arguing with?
What's that?
And who would he be arguing with? Some random person you made up?
Oh, saying it's her fault. She knows that the one thing is, or no, it would be the girl would be arguing with Rumpelstiltskin, who, accuses her of fraud for knowing his name. And I don't know. It was really weird. I don't know. It's also 20 years ago, but so it wasn't really enough to do stand up for. But basically, I started writing at that point, and for the next year, I was like, okay, next year I'm going to be ready for the talent show. And so when the next year came around, I had written 10 minutes of stand up, and my uncle Darby helped me put it together. And so the very first stand up, you could say, was I did it for 3 people in my basement before the talent show audition, and it did horribly. I didn't realize that the more people there are, the better stand up goes, I did.
Who are the 3 people?
It's my friend Mike Gould, and I don't know who the other 2. I think it was maybe this guy Jeff Kruth and another girl or something. But I just remember I had written a whole thing about how there's certain names that only old people have, and I just kept making callbacks to it. I had only ever written this set, right? It was 10 minutes of material, and every single joke had a callback to a joke that didn't work. and so I just kept calling back to a joke that no one thought was funny. And so then the next day was the audition. So I just totally that night after, I tried on them, a couple of things kind of got chuckles. So I just narrowed it down to that 5 minutes, and I reworked it. And so then it was the talent show audition was that day. And my first period was Spanish class. And it was that same teacher I had again, Mrs. Rule. And she let me practice my 5-minute set on the class. And I did really well with it. My first joke, I was super, I had no confidence. And then by the third joke, I was just beaming with confidence because everybody was laughing at my jokes. And and then word started to kind of get around before I even did the audition. Everyone's like, oh, I heard you did stand up in Spanish class and it was really funny. So I did the audition, it went well. I did the actual show, and this was now in front of hundreds of people. I don't even remember, but I don't know, maybe 400 people or something. So I had written my jokes on my hand, and I was so nervous that my sweaty palms, the jokes came off. So I was on stage oh, I don't know my jokes. And there's but I didn't realize that I'd never kind of been on stage like that before. I didn't realize that when you're in a spotlight, you can't see anything, I didn't realize I wouldn't be able to see the audience, or I could just hear people. And yeah, it was just pretty surreal. and it's very like I have a video of it now, and it's very embarrassing. It's like I was like so absurdly confident. I was like literally dancing after every punchline. um,
Now, how old are you? Like
but yeah,
17,
and then I
18?
started like, so I was right about to turn 17. I think I
Okay.
was 16, and it was like right after 9/11. And I was just like, the comedy, the world needs comedy. The world needs to heal. No, it was unrelated, but it was coincidentally after 9/11. And actually, that same Spanish class, side note, is where like I learned that well, one tower had already been hit, and then my Spanish teacher turned on the TV and we saw the second tower get hit. So that's how long my comedy career is. Think about how long ago 9/11 feels.
I know it feels like it's 5
That's
decades
how.
ago, and it's like,
But yeah, so then I looked up like open mics in Cleveland, and the first one I went to after that talent show was this place called the Robin's Nest, and it was basically like, I didn't realize, I went with a couple of friends, and it was like basically an urban room, which is code for Black people, and it wasn't just stand up. It was like the guy that went up right before me did slam poetry, and he literally was like, I need a volunteer. And I didn't raise my hand. He still called me on stage, and he did his whole act like directed at me. And he was like, the white man trying to bring me down. The white man, the problem. Like, this was his slam poetry. and then I got off stage, and the host comes back on and is like, and now stand up from Rob O'Reilly. And I had to get back on stage after I'd just been like the victim of a hate crime, basically. And to go on stage and be like, hey guys, isn't it weird when you have a teacher and they do like just like my dumb stupid stand-up. One of my jokes was what was it? I remember I had one really weird joke about an animal. It's like about a kangaroo or something. But yeah, I just remember like I did like some of my weird jokes, and the audience was just like, what the fuck? Like, what is this little, like, I mean, I've always looked younger than I am, so I think when I was 16, I probably looked like I was like 12, and they're like, what is this like 12-year-old white boy up here talking about kangaroos forever? So, oh, and then by the way, one guy that night was like I know what the weird joke was. Okay, because this connects to it. Okay, so I had a joke that I thought it was a joke, but it wasn't that funny. But it was it was like I thought it was funny to just go, koala bears are awesome, and then move on and not say anything else about it. So like, this is like a non sequitur, just in the middle of, apropos of nothing. Koala bears are awesome. Okay, so I'm doing my act, and there was like, by the way, there was like a thing that night that was like best comeback award or something. It was like $50. So because the audience was like encouraged to heckle people, and this one guy was heckling me, and he had like bushy white hair on each side of his head and 2 gold front teeth. So he's kind of like heckling me, and then I'm like, koala bears are awesome. And then everyone in the audience is, to my surprise, is kind of like, oh shit, he does look like a koala bear. and so I unintentionally won best comeback or something.
I love it. Getting back to that, like college era, high school era, you mentioned some comedians before, Mitch Hedberg, for example. I mean, God, do I miss that guy? What a one of a kind stand-up he was. I just watched some of his stuff a couple weeks ago. I hadn't seen him in years, and I forgot how great he was. Who are some of your influences back in those days, like high school, college days?
Yeah, all those guys I just said for sure. I mean, I think the biggest was Mitch Hedberg. I even kind of sounded like him, like weirdly. Like I think even just that koala joke, you can tell, right? I was like, koalas are awesome. Or like I kind of did his cadence. I think most beginner comics kind of fall into that trap of like, they kind of just emulate someone that they like until they eventually realize that they have to do their own voice. They have to like talk as themselves, and that's the funniest version of you.
How long does it take you to find your voice?
I mean, I think everyone's a little different, but I think probably like a few years. I don't know. I remember like having kind of like a epiphany like kind of getting it about when I was like about 21 or 22. So I guess that was like 5 years, maybe 5 or 6 years in.
I mean, you started young. I mean, 16 is pretty young though. I mean, a lot of guys don't start till 21, 22. It seems like some of the guys I've talked to.
Some people even later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did get an early start. And it's funny for, a lot of my career for like those first 5 to 10 years, I was always kind of like the young guy. Also because I looked even younger than I was, but like that was kind of my shtick, was that I was like so young. And then it's funny. I mean, now I'm 36, so it's like, it's like I'm definitely not the young guy. I don't know what my shtick is now. It's like
Middle-aged
I
guy now.
feel so old compared to most comics now. It's such a weird flip of how things used to be.
You know,
Uh,
you lived in New York obviously for a while back then as well.
yeah,
Like
for
what was
4
that
years.
like? So, I remember you last time I talked to you years ago and I lived in LA, you were talking about how New York had a big influence on you and you were kind of hesitant to move to LA. But take us through your first stand-up experiences in New York.
Yeah, well, I moved there. I graduated early from college, so I graduated when I was like 21. And I moved to New York right after from BU, and I didn't know a single person. Like, I mean, it's kind of like when I look back, I'm like, that was really ballsy. Like,
Real ballsy. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it didn't seem crazy to me at the time. I guess like I was just like 21, so it's just like whatever. I'm just moving to New York. I don't know anyone. I don't have any money. Like, I
Great
don't have
idea.
any ins at any clubs or anything. But like, when you're young, you don't kind of get like everything you have ahead of you, I guess. But yeah, I found a guy through a mutual friend. I found this guy who had a room available. A comedian had a room available in Astoria. Guy Dan Allen, and it just so happened that he uh like ran like the comedian basketball world. And so I started to play, and I had played a little basketball up to that point, and I started to play a lot of basketball at that point. And I think that kind of helped in a weird way. I like met a lot of comics playing basketball, and then I started to kind of get in at like really little dumb rooms, like like little Astoria cafes, and like some kind of like C-level comedy clubs would have me up quite a bit. That's really key, is like just finding at least one guy who like believes in you and like gives you a lot of stage time. And I found a couple of people in New York that the first guy was this guy Sal something, I can't remember his last name now, but he had a room, Sal's Comedy Hole. And then later on, this guy Aaron Haber, who I still know pretty well, he had a room, um, World Cafe. And it was like basically a room that like tourists, like they'd hand out flyers in Times Square and tourists would come in. So it was like a new crowd of tourists every, there's like 3 shows every night or something. So you could get a ton of stage time, which was crucial for developing. Like if you just need to get a ton of reps to get better, especially with that scenario, because there were kind of no stakes. I could just like fuck with the crowd. I could be loose. I could like, up until that point, up until I moved to New York, I had zero ability to do crowd work. I didn't I just didn't even like, if the crowd heckled or did something weird, I just didn't even acknowledge it, which is like the absolute worst thing you could do. You need to definitely address weird things that happen. Um, and I mean, it's, yeah, I don't know. It was for the most part a really fun time in my life. And I was like single for a lot of it. So there was a lot of just like meeting girls, and that part's fun too. But yeah.
Especially in New York City. I mean, you at that time, how long does it take you? You were talking about the stage time. How many performances until you're like, I'm starting to kind of get my groove now. I'm starting to really, fall into what I'm supposed to be.
Um, I mean, like I think like, let's imagine you're 5 years in and you've performed at least like once a week. So that's like maybe 250 or something. I
Wow,
don't know.
that's a lot. I mean,
Something like that. I don't know. But
for people who don't know much about
everyone
stand up,
develops at different paces too, though. I mean,
yeah,
to be honest, I, not to sound arrogant, I was like a very quick learner with stand. Like I was very, like my first set, like my first basic set was like very good for being how young I was. Like, I mean, I see a lot of, people who are 20 or younger who are nowhere near where I was at that point. Like that, um, like I'm not saying it was like amazing comedy, but it like I could make the crowd laugh for sure. Like I would get applause breaks and stuff. Um, if anything, I kind of rocketed up and then plateaued for the next 20 years. I rocketed up quick and then just stayed exactly where I was. But but yeah, everybody develops it. I mean, some people are just like, I mean, some people are kind of that slow and steady thing where it's like they takes them like 10 years, but then all of a sudden they're just like amazing. And you're like, where did that come from? Like, I could think, I won't name names, I guess, but I can think of quite a few friends of mine that were like kind of shitty comics for like years. And then just all of a sudden became like great. And I'm like, that's weird. Like,
Where does this come from?
Yeah. But it's usually those kind of guys are usually the kind of guys that are really funny off stage, but they just haven't like clicked about how to write jokes. And then when they figure out how to write a joke, they've already got the charisma part and all that. Like that's almost like the hardest part, I'm kind of that inverse of that. I think like I'm not funny off stage at all, but if given time to write, I'm a good writer basically. So I know how to write jokes, and I think from the get-go I had a pretty good idea of how to write a joke because I had been such a studious fan of stand-up comedy. I had watched it so much and I'm very analytical. So I had literally like as a 15-year-old broken down how jokes work. Like I was like, okay, there's like 3 categories of jokes. Like there's like the analogy, the exaggeration, and I like thought of when I would think of a premise, I'd like run it through these kind of scenarios and think of like how to come up with the funny angle for it.
I mean, it really is an art form, and I love watching. Like I look back at my dad. I grew up watching the Rodney Dangerfield special, so Bill Hicks and all those kind of guys, and Robin Harris, and there was a ton of guys in the '80s I watched. And then of course Carlin and Pryor, and and then you really get into the Mitch Hedbergs of the world and those guys in the '90s and early 2000s, and there's just so many unique comics. And with you, it's got to be hard, Rob, to find your niche. And I know you kind of said you started off more like had that Hedberg cadence to your voice, and you kind of not copying him, but you're kind of influenced by him. But it's got to be difficult to really find your voice, and especially that young of an age. Not really ever doing this before. I mean, it's a heck of an accomplishment to be doing that many shows and getting the crowd to laugh. And I mean, I couldn't imagine going up and doing that at that age.
Well, thank you. So, well, speaking of sounding like Mitch Hedberg, another thing I just thought of is this one time I had a show really early on, like my first year of comedy, and I left a tape recorder on the table, and a couple of my high school friends were there, and I heard my high school friend talking shit about me
Oh God.
to a girl, and being like, he's just copying Mitch Hedberg. He just sounds like Mitch Hedberg, and he and like I don't even think he came up with any of these jokes, and like just talking so much
Shit.
and I don't think I ever confronted him about it, but it really hurt my feelings. And I
Hopefully,
think that's probably part of why I was like, okay, I need to stop doing the Mitch Hedberg voice.
yeah. I mean, that's got to be difficult to, find your own voice. And I mean, stand up is so. You said it takes a lot of balls to walk up on stage and do what you guys do. And I remember I saw you live probably 10 years ago in LA. It was a smaller club somewhere. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I would never have the balls to do that. Like, that takes a lot of courage to do what you guys do. And when I had Clint Coley on here, he told me he performed up in Boston. I think it was his first show or one of his first shows. And he said, Brad, nobody showed up. Not one person showed up. So he goes, I take Boston personally now. He's like, every time I go there, I want to, get a triple double. But it's just like one of those things where I can't imagine, again, being in your spot and having the courage to do that every time. Do you still get nervous anytime you go on stage, or is it pretty much the point where you're like, I got this?
No, not really. I mean, I get nervous if there's something at stake.
Okay.
Like if it's a TV taping or a competition, I still kind of get a little nervous. I'll kind of pace a little beforehand, sweaty palms, I suppose. But 99% of the shows I do, there's really nothing that seems to matter about it. And I'm almost too comfortable on stage. Like I'll like scratch my ass. Like I'll like not even like think about, being in front of people basically.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah, it's like I'm weirdly comfortable. Um, yeah, it took I don't know. It took until I was like in New York, so it took like a solid 4 or 5 years to no longer get nervous. And I mean, in the beginning, it'd be like, oh, okay, well, I can't eat a meal, because I'm going to be nervous. So, like, I can't like eat a meal beforehand. So I have to wait till after my show to eat. And then, of course, after my show, I'm like very hungry because I haven't eaten for hours. And now it's like I could like have like a gigantic meal and then like be called on stage. It literally happens to me all the time. I'm like eating pasta, like, and then I'm like, oh, I have to go do an hour now. It's like I just don't care at all. But yeah, like I'm taping a dry bar comedy special on next Saturday, the March 6th. I don't know when this podcast comes out, but although the dry bar won't come out for a while, I don't think. But I know I'll be nervous for that because I'm very excited to do like a 25-minute comedy special for them. It's like it's this thing where they tape comics, it's like a nice multi-camera setup, and they put it online, Facebook and everything. And you ever heard of Dry Bar or no?
No. And where's it filmed at?
It's in they tape them all in Provo, Utah. And so you have to
Really?
it's like the crowd is like basically Mormon.
Is it why Provo? I wonder.
It's just where it is. I don't know.
Okay.
It's Dry Bar. I think it's called Dry Bar because it's like they don't drink, right, in Utah.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense now.
And it's the whole premise of it is that it's very clean. It's like rated G comedy. I am typically not a rated G comic, so I've had to, figure out all of the jokes from my act. Believe it or not, like, I mean, I have probably like an hour and 15 minutes of like material I regularly do over, that I've written over the course of whatever this is, 20 years. But like, literally like 20 minutes of it is clean. Like, and like even like 3 of those minutes are like questionable, so it's like but I've written like a new 10 minutes of like clean material for it too. A lot about my new relationship. I just recently got married, so
yeah, congratulations. I saw that.
Thank you. So yeah, I've written a lot of new jokes. My wife was just telling me that she's asking for a cut. She's like, "You're writing all your jokes about me. I want a cut."
Yeah, I
like,
can
you
see your
do get
point.
a cut, which is that I pay for everything. I pay for all of our lives. So but yeah, so I'm excited for that. I've been putting a lot of effort into coming up with my rated G set for it. It's been fun.
Rob, you're writing, you said like 10 new minutes, for example. How long does that take you? I mean, in theory, like how long does it take you to come up with 10 minutes worth of good, solid jokes?
Well, probably about a minute a week. So 10 weeks or something. Sounds about right. Yeah. So it's like every few days I come up with like a new 30-second bit or something.
Interesting.
Yeah. More or less.
Okay. Because I mean, to have a whole special, I mean, half hour, whatever it is, I mean, that's a long.
I mean, honestly, my pace would be much faster if there were shows. Like the only shows I'm doing are like on Zoom once a week, or like I'm here and there. I'm getting up at real shows in Vegas right now, but there's only like 3 shows, so like they can only put me up so much. And like for instance, Monday I'm doing a show that takes place at like a rowdy bar, and I'm gonna go up there with my rated G material. It's gonna be like I did this show with my normal act and bombed. So like with this act, which is all like G Willikers, like I don't know, it's like the new material is like basically like if a youth pastor did comedy, like that's that's like the basic style of it. It's like, so it's not gonna go well.
Oh, that's great. I kind of wish it was on. Is anybody gonna tape this?
The dry bar, or the Monday thing?
Yeah.
No. If anyone did tape it, I would steal their phone and burn it. I did a show the other night, and my wife was like, "Do you want me to live stream this?" And I was like, "No." It's like a terrible crowd. It's like, I don't want anyone seeing this ever.
Now, tell us about when you moved from New York to LA. Why for that move, and give us a little background as far as going on the Tonight Show and all the different experiences you had in LA. I know you had quite a few.
Yeah, well, so I was in New York for 4 years, and then I think when I was like 24, 25, I moved to LA. I had just well, I did like 1 year. I think when I was 23, I did Live at Gotham, and with my Live at Gotham tape, I sent that out to all the NACA, which is North American College Association. So, long story short, I got booked at all these college gigs. So I spent like when I was like 24, I spent like a year touring colleges, and I did like over 100 colleges in 1 year. And you get like $1,200 a college or something. So I made a bunch of money, and for the first time in my life, like I was like, just up until that point, I had just no money ever. I was living in New York and making like 10 grand a year off comedy, and like,
Wow.
I mean, it's like it's nothing for living in New York. um and Anyway, so I suddenly had this money. I moved to LA, and figured I would try to get a job like as a TV writer. I think that was kind of my goal. And I didn't really know what I wanted, I think partly too. So, I mean, I started doing shows, and whenever someone kind of moves to LA from New York, they kind of immediately have some sort of a buzz about them, I think. And I like had a little bit of one. But I definitely effed it up a couple times. I mean, I remember I did one show in front of the Just for Laughs people, which is like a big Montreal comedy showcase that everybody wants to get on. And I ended up like getting mad at the audience, which is like the worst thing you do, because they're like giving me nothing. I'm like, what the hell is wrong? Like, I just like went off on them. Like, I'm like, that's a great joke. And then I was just like, oh God, this woman does not think I'm funny now. But anyway, so yeah, so I had some like I remember I did a showcase show that I did really well on, and I got all these meetings from it. Like, and I didn't even have like a manager or anything yet, but like it was like, you know, so I'm getting like emails from like CBS, like that tracked me down. Like I remember I went in for like a general meeting with the lead people at CBS, and they were kind of like, okay, so like you're really funny, like what do you want to do? At that point, I was like 25, and like I wish I could so bad I could go back in time and be like, here are like 10 things but like at that point I was just like, yeah, like I was like, I want to do like comedy, like I want to like I was like, I just want to be like a comedian and or maybe like write or like I don't know, act or whatever. Like I just had zero plan, and they were just like, cool, cool. Like we're never gonna call you again. So yeah, like I basically just I don't know, like I almost feel like now I should just be like a comedy manager and like help guide people to do not make all the mistakes that I made, because I feel like I could be so much further along had I mean, honestly, it is kind of a thing of like when you're young and funny, you get this buzz, and if you don't capitalize on it, you become basically where I'm at, which is like just kind of like a no-name comedian who can like headline a club but isn't going to fill any seats or anything. And it's like, it's just, I don't know, it's frustrating, right? Because it's like so many of my peers went on to become like uber famous. But it's all good. I mean, I'm not like I'm fine with how things ended up, but I just certainly could have done things differently. But yeah, what was the question?
So what about like all the other experiences in LA, the Tonight Show, Comedy Central, everything you did while you were there, tell us about some of those experiences, and how did you get on the Tonight Show, and where did that all
Well,
go?
the Tonight Show was actually from before I moved there. I was actually in
Okay.
college when I got on Tonight Show, but it was because
Was it that long ago?
yeah,
Wow.
they had a competition for um like who wants to be a Tonight Show correspondent, is when Jay Leno was the guy. And so um I had just coincidentally made like a man on the street tape of, because at BU I was in the film department, so I could run out cameras. And it's, by the way, kids today are so spoiled with how good like even like the technology on your phone is for
Oh, I
making
know.
video. It's just like so
Trust me, my
annoying.
nephew, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, because I had to like rent these like gigantic cameras, and even then like the video quality was like a fraction of what an iPhone is now,
Yeah.
but so I rented these giant cameras and a mic and everything, and got my friend to go shoot this man on the street video with me, and we shot stuff for like I don't know, 3 hours or something. And I remember at the end of it just being like, was any of that even funny? Like, I don't know if anything is, but sure enough, I like cut it down to like a very funny 4 minutes or something. Like, if you talk to people for 3 hours, you're going to find at least, even the least funny people on earth will say at least a few funny things. So, so yeah, I just had happened to have made that. So I sent that in on the Tonight Show, and they played it on the air. Like they really liked my clips. They played on the air, and they even then later played it on like Best of the Tonight Show or something. It was like the kind of standout clip was like this guy was talking to me from a recumbent bicycle, and he was like, "This is the kind of thing that this kind of thing is for the kind of guy who wants you to just sit back and relax." And I was like, you know what else is good for that? Cars. And yeah, so and then I kind of had talks with the Tonight Show about being an actual correspondent, but they didn't end up going anywhere, which was frustrating. But so and then Live at Gotham I got while I was in New York. I had done this March Madness competition, which still exists. This guy Josh Filipowski has a March Madness competition every March, and I'm actually doing it this year again on via Zoom. But yeah, I did like the first ever one, and it was 64. It's like the NCAA basketball thing, so it was like 64 comics, 1 minute each, and then like 32 comics, 2 minutes.
That's pretty cool, actually. I would.
Yeah, so huge bracket. I made it to the final two. It was me and this guy Julian McCullough, and he ended up winning. But Comedy Central was in the audience, and I got Live at Gotham, I think more or less from that. And my show was amazing. It was me, Nate Bargatze, Mike Vecchione, Aaron Jackson, and maybe one more person. But and honestly, like I'm very honest about my sets, but not to sound arrogant, but I killed that night. Like the actual TV taping, I just absolutely destroyed. And I walked, and Nate Bargatze had to follow me, who was like an amazing comic. And he was like upset about having to follow me. He was like, Jesus. He was like, I've never seen someone kill so hard. And so I felt really good about it. But it was like, it ended up being kind of this weird letdown because I didn't even have a manager. I didn't have anything. I was like 23, and I thought, like, well, here we go, fame. It's like I just killed on a TV, and nothing happened. Like nothing. It didn't change my life like in any way, at least immediately. Again, I did send that tape out, and I got booked on these college gigs, so I had kind of indirectly it worked to my favor. And then I moved out to LA, and I think a big part of this is like having a manager. And I think everyone just assumed I already had a manager because I had done like Live at Gotham, and like the people, because the people in LA, like if you start in LA, you get a manager the first time you write a joke, basically. Like, like they're just, everybody wants to manage everybody, apparently, I think, if you're young, basically. So when I moved to LA, everybody just assumed I already had a manager, I think. But I ended up like in about a year into doing stand-up, I ran into through stand-up, I met this guy Christian Duguay, who was one of the executive producers of Ridiculousness, an MTV show.
Oh yeah, yep.
And so one night I drunkenly was like, I really wanted a job, so I just like, I saw him, and I just drunkenly, like literally, like we were both drunk in a bar, and I was just like, you should give me a job on Ridiculous. And he was just like, okay. That's how I got my first job.
Oh shit,
like,
dude! My dad is obsessed with Ridiculousness. He still watches it all the time. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
Of all the random shows he watches, oh, he's obsessed.
I ended up working. I worked on that show for like 6 or 7 years.
Really? What did you do?
Started as a writer, and then I was a producer, which, is basically like finding clips and As jobs go, what a great job. Like most people get yelled at if they're looking at YouTube clips, and it was like literally my job to look at funny. um, but yeah, I kept like that whole time I was like, it was weird because it kind of took me away from everything else, like I don't know if it was a blessing or a curse. I mean, for the most part, I'm very happy about, because it was like legit money, I was like making a salary, which is like very, when you've made no money most of your life and then you have a regular salary, it's like very exciting. I remember like when I first started just being like, you make how much a week? Like I would dig ditches for that much money. And then after like a week of being there, I was like, I don't know if I want to be here. like it literally had shifted so quickly. Like I was just like, I can't believe what a job this is gonna be. And then like within a week, I'm like, do I really need the money? I mean, who cares about money? Because I had gone from being a stand-up comic, which is like the best job, right, to like something that's like as jobs go, a great job, but like you still have to wake up and go in to somewhere as opposed to just sleep in and then like write a few jokes in your underwear, but yeah, I feel like it kind of took, because like then I'd be like kind of too tired at night to do stand up. Like it's not like I'm going to work at 10 hours at a job and then be like, okay, can't wait to go tackle the open mics and go hang out at shows. So I only ever did the shows I was booked on, and I didn't even really try that hard to get booked on shows. And I don't know, I think it all kind of steered me away from stand up for a while, and it's only like recently that I've actually kind of got, and it's funny, I kind of basically got right back into stand up like right before a pandemic. Like then a
Perfect
pandemic
timing.
yeah, it's like amazing timing for me in my stand up career. But yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Yeah, I had no idea about ridiculousness. That's so funny because my dad, Rob, I mean, for like the last 2 or 3 years, all the guy talks about, I don't know why, how he got into it. But he told me, he's like, Brad, you ever seen the show Ridiculousness? I'm like, yeah, of course. He's like, oh man, I watch it all the time now. He knows every episode. He's obsessed with it. But that's funny. He
The,
probably
the
watched
night
half the clips you picked.
that night that I basically got the job by drunkenly asking this guy for a job, I like kind of accidentally went to a rap party for season 1, I think it was. And so yeah, it must have been season 1 because I think I started season 2. So so Rob Dyrdek was there, and he just like he came up to me and he just started talking to me about his like his empire. He's like, I have like a skating empire and I have got like the TV thing, and it's like, it's just synergy, bro. Like it's just like one thing feeds the other, which feeds the other. And basically this kind of, it'd be like if a 16-year-old was explaining business to you. Like that's basically what it was like. He just started talking to me and it was just like, cool, man. And I was like, I guess this is gonna be my boss now.
How was it working there? How was he, and how was that whole, the
I
atmosphere?
mean, he's awesome. I don't want
Yeah,
to
he
sound
seems
like
like an awesome dude. It would seem like it'd be a fun set
he
to,
is.
go play.
He's super fun. He's like he's like the kind of guy that just never grew up. He's like a perpetual teenager, but he's hilarious. Um, and I would say like being a writer for the show was not ideal for me because him and I think the best is to be a writer for someone who has like a similar style to you, because I mean, it couldn't be more different. Like his whole shtick on that show is just basically like, whoa, that just happened. Like it's just very like reactionary. Like whereas when I started on the show, I was trying to write jokes, Like I remember a specific example. One time we had a clip that was like a horse that was acting crazy, and so I wrote the line for him. When this horse dies, it's gonna become crazy glue. And like, see, like that's the kind of joke I would think of, right? Like, because it's like I don't know, it's like, I don't say it's not a pun, but like that kind of thing, right? And that's not the kind of joke he does at all. Like everyone just looked at me like what show do you think you're writing for? It's like, because the actual joke that he'll tell is basically something like, that horse is crazy. Like, like oh, I don't want to ride that thing. You know what I mean? Like,
Uh,
it's not like, you know what I mean? It's not like the style that I have. So, um, yeah, I eventually moved to a different department, which was basically just finding clips. But, but yeah, but it was cool. It was a lot of really fun, cool people on that show too. A lot of very funny comics, like Chris Nugay, that guy that hired me, is an unbelievably funny stand-up comic, and some other guys like Hampton Yount was there, and Andy Haynes. There are a lot of funny comics.
yeah, but that's it's interesting. What when you look back at your time there, Rob, what were the one or two experiences you took away from that kind of propelled you to where, like, that you'll take with you? Say, I learned A, B, and C working in that.
Ridiculousness.
Yeah,
Ooh. Um, well, I think one thing I learned is maybe it seems obvious to like most of the world, but it was my first job, so I think I should have been more prepared for day one, like if I had to do it over again, I'd be like, I would have watched every episode. Like, I think there's a lot of people in this boat too that like they start a job and they haven't like done their homework, and it's like you should absolutely come prepared, because you don't have that much time to make a first impression. Honestly, like a lot of the people, because okay, so I get hired. Well, okay, so Christian's like, yeah, I'm going to bring you in as a writer, right? So I didn't know that meant like it's basically a trial, right? And um, so most of the writers that would come in, especially when I first started, they'd only come in for like a week or something, and then you'd never see them again because they didn't like work out or whatever. They weren't bringing their best stuff or whatever to the writers' room. So, um, and this guy, the Hampton Yount, who already worked there, kind of said that to me, but like in a way I didn't really understand, and I felt was insulting when I was like, oh, I'm going to be like a writer at Ridiculousness with you, and he's kind of like, yeah, we'll see how long you last. But like at the time I was like, what a dick. But afterwards I was like, oh, I see what he meant, which is basically like there's like a revolving door of people who are coming in and not staying, and because it's like if you just don't say anything the first week, they're not going to bring you back for the second week. Like you have to like contribute right away. So I mean, fortunately I contributed enough, I guess, to stick around, but it was touch and go in the beginning, I remember. And I came back. I fortunately I got, after that season, I got back the next season. And that time I like spent all summer writing for the show, which basically meant coming up with names of categories. Like that's like a big part of it, is like coming up with unique ways of packaging clips together with a funny title. So I came up with a bunch of them. I came in season 4 or whatever it was with like 50 of these ideas or something. So I'd say I should have just done that from the get-go. I should have been, that's like any job, I think, is basically come in with ideas and impress your bosses so that you make a good first impression. And I mean, I learned a lot about how like people get, okay, so like on that show specifically, it was really hard. They really wanted female writers. So those early seasons I'm kind of referring to, they could not, like, for a long time they couldn't seem to find a good female writer. Like this revolving door was a lot of like, they would literally like be like, oh, she's funny on Twitter, let's bring her in, and then some girl would come in, and some mousy girl would come in and sit there for a week and not say a damn thing, and they'd give her a second week and she'd not say a damn thing, and then they'd be like, okay, next. So like if you are like a funny female and you want to work as a writer, believe me, you can. Like, you need to get yourself out there and like get on Twitter, get on whatever, like make a name for yourself. You will get a job, because like I guarantee there's other shows like this where they're like struggling to find, and when someone is good, they get a lot of more work after that, right? So we finally did find a couple of good female writers, and then they ended up doing a lot of better shows after that stepping stone. But yeah,
that's interesting. What do you, at this point, Rob, like, where are you, where do you see yourself in the next year or two? I mean, obviously the pandemic has been, when it comes to stand up, it's kind of, screwed everything up. But let's say in the next 6 months, it starts, getting a little bit better and you can start getting out more. Do you plan on touring? Do you plan on just, staying in Vegas for the most part, or what are you looking to do?
$1 million question, Brad. I don't know. My wife is from Peru, so we're very heavily talking about going out there for at least a while, at least a year or maybe a few years. And so I don't know. I mean, if I do that, I don't know how much stand up I'll be doing. I do. I have kind of this in recently of performing on cruise ships. So
Really?
I think I'm going to try to do that at some point. And you can kind of do that from anywhere because the cruise line will fly you into wherever your port is.
They pay good money?
It does pay. It pays really well. Yeah.
Nice.
And you get like multiple shows, you're there, you get to be like, you do a clean show and a dirty show and blah, blah. And I think that'd be cool. I do have a lot of alone time to just write during the day, I'm sure. So I'm sure it'd be kind of like almost like going to comedy camp or something, but I'm sure there's like a horrible side to it too, which is like just I'm certain that the crowds are like super douchey and stuff on a cruise ship. Like I'm certain that there's just a certain type of person that I don't particularly like performing for, but nonetheless, I'd be excited to do that.
Well, I want to ask you, speaking of, not to cut you off here, but you're talking about people who are douchey or hecklers. What is the worst heckler you ever had to face? Like, any kind of confrontation?
Yeah, I almost told this story earlier when I was talking about that World Cafe in New York. There was one night where this guy with a Yankees hat on was like just being a dick, and at some point I was kind of like, all right, I got to get out of here or something, and he started being like, he starts like, he's like clapping at the idea that I'm like leaving soon or something, and that really set me over. The worst thing you can do as a comedian is like get upset and show the audience, but I still every once in a while I do it. I just did it like a year ago. I got same exact scenario. Basically, this guy said something annoying, and I just was like, basically, fuck you and stuff. Like even like I don't know. It's because it's hard to explain. It's like even though I know I shouldn't, it's just like it's me so mad when someone's a dick about it. It's like you said, it takes so much balls to get on stage. It just takes so much to like put yourself out there, right? And to have someone reject you, and it's like I know you, heckler, have never done jack shit. And if you had done anything, if you tried to fucking come up here for 3 minutes, how hard it is. And yet you have the fucking audacity to like, give me a hard time. And it just sets me up sometimes. But and I shouldn't let the audience see that it gets to me, but I can't help it. Anyway, so back to this guy with the Yankees hat. So basically what happened was I get off stage and I have to like walk past him to leave, and I went like that, and I just knocked the hat off his head.
What did he do?
He didn't do anything. I mean, I thought we were gonna fight or something, like this
Oh shit!
Douchey. He was such like a bridge and tunnel douchebag, and he was like, I just was like, "Fuck you!" and I knocked his hat off.
Yeah, I don't know how it would be too hard for me not to say something like that, just because.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, it takes a lot of balls to do what you're doing. And, to have that kind of courage and these people who sit there, I mean, look, not everyone's going to like you. We all know that. Any comedian, you're not going to be everybody's, style. We get that. I never understood people who do that. It does provide entertainment in the fact when the comedian goes back at them. But beyond that, I always thought it was, kind of ridiculous.
Well, there's like different kinds of hecklers, and there's a lot of what happens with hecklers is that like the majority of hecklers I would say are people who literally think they are helping the show. They're like, I know how this is gonna go. I'm gonna set you up, and you're gonna say something funny, and and I can take it, like wink wink, like we're doing a little thing here. It's like, but like, and I promise you, no comedian wants to be like. It's like they always come up to you afterwards, like, like I'm the guy, and like to expect to be like, thanks, It's like no, it's like. I get that I made it funny, but I was still annoyed. Like I was still seething inside when you interrupted. Because the truth of the matter is, I mean, I don't know, different comics are different, right? And some comics, they just care about that show, improvising, whatever, being funny that night. But that's not really my mindset. My mindset is almost always like about the distant future. It's like I am trying to figure out how to write an act like that'll be great, that someday I'll put on HBO or whatever it is, Netflix, whatever. But like, so I always have a agenda with every show, which is like, here are these like 10 new jokes I'm going to do, and I want to get through them. And so it's especially annoying, like you're trying a new joke, right? And then someone's like, blah, 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 and you're like, fuck. It's like in your head, you're like, fuck, dude, I fucking spent all week writing this joke, and you're going to interrupt my joke. Like, just shut the fuck up. I want, you know? But, you know.
Is that the toughest part of stand-up? Is just the hecklers or people giving you shit, or is it just getting on stage itself?
The hardest part of stand-up is putting a tremendous amount of effort into something that gives you very little in return. like most stand-up comics, myself included, it's like I could have done something much more lucrative, that was like I could have become a lawyer or something, I would have hated it. But I'm saying, like, in terms of like my IQ and my, you know what I mean? I'm like, I could have done something else. And yet I am spending all week writing jokes so that I can go up and try to make these fucking idiots laugh, and then like having a club be rude to you and be like, "Ooh, actually, you're gonna have to pay for your meal," and your drinks aren't comped. It's just there's an endless. You are a commodity as a comedian, right? Unless you're famous. If you're where I'm at, which is like basically this level of like funny but not famous, you're just a commodity to them. There's 100 other guys that could also come in and make the crowd laugh. So they don't I mean, not all of them. There's plenty of clubs that treat you well, right? Like Hilarities in Cleveland, they treat comics really well, right? But there's so many clubs that just treat you like fucking dog shit. One time I was at a club in New York, and I took my my then fiance, who was my first wife. I've been married twice. So we go into this club, and they're trying to make her pay for a ticket, and I'm like, no, like, she's with me, she's my fiance. And I'm like, okay. So then she tries to sit in the audience, and they come by and they're like, it's gonna be a 2-drink minimum. And I'm like, no, she's with me. And they're like, well, then she can't sit here. And I'm like, okay. So then she goes and comes to the green room with me, and the manager comes over and goes, the green room is only for comics. You're not allowed to be in here. Something. I'm like, so she goes and stands in like the hallway. Like all this time, I'm like kind of chaperoning her where to go. So we go to the hallway, and then the manager's like, you can't stand in the hallway. Like, the waiters have to come to here. I'm like, where is she supposed to be? You have literally eliminated every spot from this club, right? And she's like, and then this other like suck up comic goes like, why are you arguing with the manager? Like, don't you want to perform at this club? And I go, not now. And I fucking just left.
Did you really?
Yeah, I left. I was supposed to do a set, and I just left. And I was just so fucking annoyed. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, it's like I'm in it's like I'm on candid camera. Like, everywhere I take my fiance, she's not allowed to be there. And I just thought it was so fucking rude, like, if you're asking her to pay for a ticket, you're basically asking me to pay to perform.
Yeah,
because I'm the one paying for it. And then on top of that, sends an email to the guy who booked me, like, about how rude I was. So then he gets a report that I'm rude, right? And it's like, oh yeah, I was rude. And so then, of course, I've burned a bridge, and now I can't perform at that club ever again, probably. And it's just like, it's just shit like that, where it's like, you just get treated like dog shit all the time. And it's like, it's just it's like you work so hard to like achieve this level only to be disrespected. And I think that's the hardest part. But for the most part, it's great. I mean, I'm focusing on the negative, but for the most part, it's really fun. Well, anyone who's listening to this, I don't know, how long will it take for this to come out?
About 3 weeks.
Okay, so then I think by then I will have released. You should check out. I do have to go, by the way, too. So this is a good time to plug things. But I wrote and produced my own comedy pilot that I'm going to put on YouTube, and it's called 3 Month Fiance. It's a parody of this reality show called 90 Day Fiance. and it's very not PC. It's got so many jokes in it. It's very funny, I promise you, but it's got so many jokes in it that you just can't put on network television. I don't think. So
Where can they find that at?
weirdly, like The Office, like I feel like that has a lot of the same kind of jokes, but for some reason everybody's okay with The Office.
Oh, I know, and it has a ton of jokes that are not politically correct at all. But it's
Yeah,
no, I
right.
agree. But it's yeah.
For some reason that never got canceled. I don't know why, but
Well,
but I think it's because Michael Scott is like supposed to be an idiot, like he's
yeah.
the one usually making these jokes. But yeah, I mean that's kind of what my show is like. There's a bunch of idiot characters that are making dumb sexist jokes and stuff. But but they're also foreigners, so like they're like. Anyways, everyone should check out my show 3 Month Fiance.
Where could they see it at?
It's on YouTube.
YouTube. Okay.
Yeah, it's like 30 minutes long, and it's like that kind of comedy. And I'm like literally I'm like I made it to put on YouTube because I know that that's the only place that I can put this. Like I know it's funny and I know there's an audience for it, you know what I mean? But it's like I can't put it anywhere else. So I don't know.
Well, check it out then, everybody watching this. One last question for you, Rob. When you look back in your career 20, 30 years from now, look at your legacy, what do you want people to say about Rob O'Reilly?
Man, did we love that show 3 Month Fiance that ended up running for 10 seasons on Netflix. What do I want people to say? That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I would like to have one big success story. I mean, like if this show was made or something like that, or like that'd be the number one thing associated with me. That'd be nice. I'd also really like to become a director. I directed this thing I'm talking about. I feel like I could be like, the next Judd Apatow or something like that if everything went well, but yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'm going to fucking Peru probably, so
hey, who knows?
Hey, famous Peruvian comedian. What if I learn Spanish and then I become a famous Peruvian comedian?
Hey, who knows, man? Who knows? Life is a crazy place. I can tell you that much. But Rob, I appreciate you coming on the show, and it was great having you and catching up with you. And good luck with everything coming up. And again, we'll check out your stuff. I'll definitely be shouting you out to my audience. So appreciate it, and have a good rest of the night.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Take care, Rob.